welcome to Just Ecology. Today we're on the beautiful Campaspe River in central Victoria in Tangerang country, and we're going to take a look at river ecology and look at what do these rivers need to thrive in this landscape. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of change to our rivers in the last few hundred years. A lot of kind of processes have led to them becoming more degraded and loss of biodiversity. And what we've actually seen is that originally these river systems would have reached their peak in the kind of winter springtime, that time when we'd have the most rainfall, the most runoff in the catchment. So that was when you'd actually get the most flow and the most depth in these systems before they kind of dried over the summer months. This has kind of been reversed now in a lot of the landscape, where most of our rivers now have major dams in the catchment. So this beautiful Campaspe has the Lake Ecology just upstream. And these dams typically hold back the water over that winter-spring period and release it more in the kind of summer-autumn months when it might be needed for farming elsewhere in the catchment, which is obviously really important for our food supply and for farmers. But unfortunately, if we take too much from these rivers, we start to see major loss of the beautiful life that's been here for forever, for millions of years. So it's really important now that we're starting to recognise more that we need to maintain these more natural flows, and there is an effort by different water agencies to release enough water during the spring period and the winter time when these rivers need that water coming down for things like fish and platypus to really thrive. The fish of these rivers would they need that kind of the right kind of water flow at the right time. They need the right temperature. They'll actually be cued by different temperature for when it's time to breed. So the problem is, if you release lots of cold water down from the system, from the reservoirs at the wrong time of year, that's changing what would have been the natural cycle, and it can actually confuse the fish, and they can be not breeding at the right time. You can see throughout this catchment there is lots of really beautiful big logs and debris through the rivers, which was once seen as a kind of major problem that had to be kind of cleaned up. The idea was, if you had too much debris in the rivers, that when the floods came, that would cause major flooding in towns and things. This can be true in some instances, but most of the time it's you need a lot of logs to actually make a flood worse. If there's going to be a flood, you tend to get enough water coming down, you're going to get a flood, and it's about having the right infrastructure around towns to protect humans from those floods. But these logs that are through the rivers are really important for the big hollow logs in the rivers. Will actually provide kind of breeding habitat for fish. They like to shelter in the hollow logs when they're like during the day, just kind of when they're as refuge. So I really need all that lovely debris through a river system to provide habitat for fish. The water quality is also really just so essential, that particularly the clarity of the water. So if we start to see too much erosion and sedimentation in the river, we start to see what we call turbidity, and that's when you get the water becomes much more cloudy rather than the lovely clear waters that would have been here prior to all these changes. So that if we start to see that really high turbid kind of cloudy water, that can actually suppress the growth of aquatic plants, because they need the sunlight in the water to grow. It starts to fill in a lot of the deeper holes that the fish need for their refuge. So it's really important that we have that lovely kind of clear water for the plants and the fish and aquatic insects that are through the rivers. There has been a lot of changes in the chemistry of the water, with rising salinity in parts of the catchment. If we start to see the kind of naturally saline groundwater coming to the surface, it can start running off into the rivers, and you can get changes to the salinity as well. So really what we can do to look after these rivers is we need less clearing in the catchment. We need much more restoration of our ecosystems, because we too often now see a very narrow kind of band of bushland along the rivers, snaking across otherwise cleared kind of farmland and other landscapes. And these corridors along the rivers are so important for animals to move along, and they can move hundreds of kilometres sometimes along these continuous bands of bushland along the rivers. But we need that vegetation to extend out from the rivers, so we don't have a catchment that's unhealthy. So it's just discharging lots of eroded, there can be a lot of soil loss, which is all getting flushed into the rivers. And the more bushland you have around the rivers, the more fauna you're going to have, the more connectivity across the landscape, so that you're going to have fauna surviving and thriving. There also would have been once abundance of really large hollow-bearing trees along these rivers, which are becoming less common because they've been cleared in the past. And the more we protect these ecosystems, the more we're going to have the trees reaching maturity and getting into these beautiful old trees, which are so important for birds to breed in, the hollows that they take refuge in and breed in as well.